Don't fall down. You're gonna kill yourself.
Okay, it's so weird. This is so freaking weird. I got a I got a tennis ball.
Yeah, you can throw it.
Oh, you can't grab it. I need cash. I love cash.
Alright, let's go. We're gonna need to gather more logs.
Mean it. Okay, Daddy,
Hmm.
come here.
Alright, come here. Help me gather more logs.
I
Oh dear, there's lots of cannibals here.
There's lots of zombies.
Mm-hmm.
You found them?
No, they're here.
The zombies are here.
Yeah. Cannibals, not zombies.
Zombies are cannibals.
No, they're different.
Oh.
But yeah, I don't care about them. I'm just gonna gather some more logs.
Daddy, I'm going back. Daddy, I'm going back.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy, I'm back on the iron. Daddy, look at this. I'm right. Daddy, do you see my name on the iron?
Nope. I'm fighting.
Daddy, I'm on the iron.
Hang on.
I'm in the house. I'm in the house. Oh. Yum, yum, yum. Listen. You can splash on the wall. Yes, swimming pool, water. I found sticks. I can't grab the sticks on the water. Woo!
Oh, grabe, nahihilo ako.
Spiders. Oopsie. There's no spider on the rock. No spider? Oh. Spiders no on the rocks. Daddy,
Mm.
I am finding spiders on the rocks. Oopsie. There's so many logs right here. Daddy, there's logs.
Mm.
There's so many logs on the iron. Daddy, I'm getting the logs.
Mm-hmm.
Dude. There's one more chest. It's not fixed. Dude, Daddy,
Mm.
all the chairs are fixed. Daddy,
Hang
all
on,
the
there are
chairs
lots of cannibals here.
Daddy, all the chairs are fixed. Daddy,
Wait, there are lots of cannibals here.
Daddy, all the chairs on the fireplace is fixed. Now everything is
Hey, I'm running!
Daddy, everything is fixed on the iron. All the chairs on the fireplace are fixed.
Yeah, wait.
Everything is fixed. I fixed it. There was
Yeah.
logs. Daddy, Daddy,
Oh, there are lots of them. There's so many.
Daddy, there's no. You don't need the more logs on the iron. Everything is fixed on the iron.
I'm gonna
Small
run.
Iron. Hello?
Ah, I'm dead.
Daddy, I'm still alive. Whoa! Your name is so big! Daddy, your name is so big! Daddy, oh, it came small. Daddy,
Yeah.
you don't need logs. Everything is fixed. Daddy, chairs are fixed. And the house is fixed. Everything is fixed. I have more rocks. Dude. We waiting every night to find. I don't need logs. I don't need logs. Daddy,
Hmm.
don't put logs on a small iron. Everything is fixed on a small iron. Daddy,
Hmm.
do you lost your stuff?
I'm gonna have to get it. I got all of it.
You ever see?
See?
Daddy, Daddy, I want a small iron.
Yeah. Come on.
Daddy, don't put logs on a small iron.
But we need to. We need to gather more.
Everything is fixed in a small iron.
No.
See, Daddy, take a look. The chairs are fixed.
Oh yeah, but we still need to build more. Oh.
Oh. What shall we do? Ooh. Got the rabbit. Oh, Daddy,
Hmm.
we need to find a deer and a pig. Wait, what is this? It's not a egg and a crocodile or any bird. And we need to find a turtle. Ooh, a different rabbit. Squirrel and another turtle. Dude, oh my god. Daddy,
Hmm.
they have a shark on here. Daddy,
Hmm.
they do have sharks on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Daddy, you mustn't swim on water on a whole day because there's sharks on here.
Mm-hmm.
Just swim on a quick one. Don't swim on a long one. Daddy? Daddy?
Hmm.
I see you! Daddy?
Hmm.
I can't see any white bits. Everything is fixed. What shall we do?
Put it in the cart.
Eat. Oh! Hey! Hey, come on. Oh, I can get those.
All right. And
Hey! What shall
Hang on. Mm-hmm.
It's not book.
Custom walls.
Oh, I'm stuck.
Shelter.
Shelter. Ooh.
The heck is that?
Daddy,
Hmm.
we need some more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy, we
Mm.
can get some more leaves. We need some leaves. Daddy,
Hmm.
we have this. E. See?
Yeah, remove that there.
Oh,
C. Hold C. There.
okay.
Because I'm gonna build something here.
Okay. We need a shelter. Shelter. Where's the shelter?
Do you have more sticks? Come here.
We do have more sticks.
Here.
Daddy,
Put it here.
Daddy,
Put more sticks here. Oh, are those sticks?
yeah, this is sticks.
Oh, yeah. Alright.
You didn't know those sticks. We have hundreds of sticks. Dude, I have lots of sticks.
Okay.
Oh, I found. Oh, fish. Daddy,
Hmm.
we need some plants. Daddy, we need
What
a garden.
plants?
We need a garden.
Where did I find it?
Daddy, we need this here.
Mm-hmm.
We need that. Oh no, we don't have more logs. We need to get it. Logs. C. Oh, E. We got one log. Oh dear. We ran out. Get some more logs. Daddy, we need some logs.
Yeah, but there are cannibals out there.
Oh, one more. See, Daddy? Daddy, come here. Daddy, come here.
Mm.
Come here. Daddy, we need some plants right here. We need a garden. We need a garden. See, this is a garden.
What?
It's a garden. Don't
what-
destroy it.
What is that?
It's a garden.
Oh, yeah.
We need plants.
Okay. I'm planting berries.
What do you mean?
I just planted berries.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, we need something else. Okay, I already find the shelter. Ooh, we need this. We need 21 bones. Oh, we need 21 sticks. We need a... See? This is where you put bones right here. We need bones right here. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I put this one here. I put this. Daddy,
Mm.
Daddy, I put this. Daddy, come here.
Hang on, wait.
What is that?
It's for the stones.
Oh dear, it's getting dark. Daddy,
Mm.
come over here. See this white thing?
What's this?
This is where you put bones.
Yeah.
Why did you delete it?
Yeah, we don't need it yet.
Okay, I'm going.
I
Okay,
just-
we need something else.
No, don't build anything just yet. We need to gather more
I
resources.
Found something. I found a house.
Don't build it yet. Don't build it yet. We need to gather more resources.
Bones. We need some more bones. Bones. bones, 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 bones. Bridge! Small bridge? No. Okay, what? Oh, we need one more this. Daddy, we need one more this. I can't see it. We need one more this to put water. We need one more that. Okay, Daddy, time for bed. Daddy, we need one more this. Because we need lots of water. Dude, let's go back to sleep. Wait, it's not nighttime yet. Hello? What's it? It's still nighttime. Okay, we need to build some more. Oh no, I'm hungry. Oh dear. I need more food. Food. Come on. I need some food. Meat. Wait. That's yes, hello. Meat. What?
I think it's time to sleep now.
Oh no, we're running out of food. Yeah.
Don't eat yet because you're gonna get hungry anyway.
I already ate food. Wait, it's not yet nighttime yet. It's not yet nighttime. Wait. Wait. I'm facing on the wrong way. Daddy, I'm facing on the wrong way. What? I was facing on the wrong way. Someone's not playing with us. Oh, there we go. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Right, let's go. We need to go to bed.
Yeah, I think it's not. It's still. See?
Press Z.
It's not yet done. It's not yet done. And it's.
Oh dear, we need to restart it again.
No, no. Just wait. It's still loading. Don't reset. It's still loading. Daddy, we don't. Oh, it's nighttime. Time to sleep.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Good morning. You just still put right here. Daddy, you need to wait. The loading is done. What did you just throw? Oh dear, it's windy. Daddy, it's windy. We can't do this. Oh no, I'm hungry. Oh no,
I'm cooking something here.
come. Oh no, I need water. Water. Okay, I'm full, and my water is good. Fire, 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 fire. Fire, 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 fire. Oh my god! You got it. I just... Yum.
Alright, I think it's time to gather woods again.
Oh no, I ran out of food.
Oh, look at this! The berries is growing.
Yeah, I know. Ooh. No. I need more fish. Okay. Daddy, we need to get some more. How did you find that leaf?
It's not a leaf. It's the turtle shell.
Where do you find it?
Someday they're crawling here on the beach. Right. Need to gather more woods.
Daddy,
Come
wait
here,
for
help me.
I am coming. I need my
But we need to be careful because
stupid zombies are coming.
it's not zombies.
Yeah. Oh, there's one in here. Daddy,
Mm.
we need to put a fireplace on here. How could you? Like, oh, fireplace. Okay. Fireplace right here. Okay, Daddy, I put a fireplace.
Mm-hmm.
We need some sticks, rocks, and leaves. Daddy,
Mm.
I live hungry, but I'm still alive. Spiders, come on, come. Come on, itsy bitty spider, come out in the rock. Itsy bitty spider, come off in the rock. Daddy,
Mm.
I'm scared.
Why?
Daddy, come here.
Wait, I'm chopping trees.
Daddy, Daddy,
Mm.
we need some rocks, sticks, and leaves on this fireplace. Rock. Oh, I do have rock. See? Dude, I ran out. Dude. Daddy, we need some leaves for the fireplace.
Okay.
We need leaves. Itsy bitty spider, it died on the axe. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Insipid. Oh, that's not the right one. Insipid spider. Okay. I'm scared. Daddy,
Mm.
I'm scared.
Why?
I hear zombies. I hear something shouting. Daddy, I
Mm.
want you to come here. I'm afraid.
Hang on.
I hear zombies.
Where are you?
I'm on the fireplace and I'm hiding.
Oh, okay.
Daddy, come back.
Hang on, I'm building the tower.
Don't. I'm scared.
The zombies are far. The cannibals are far.
Okay, that's good.
They're on the other side. Look at him. He's just walking.
Okay, I'm going back to the small iron.
Okay.
Because I'm afraid. I don't want to go to the big iron. Because big iron sucks. Because it have zombies on it. Daddy,
Mm.
can you get some more food? We're running out of food.
Okay.
Daddy, we need some more food. Oh,
Hey, Trash Panda Dogo, thanks for the follow.
Daddy,
Yeah.
we need sticks and leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh no. Daddy, we need some more sticks. And the butt, we can get it.
Ah, something down.
Daddy, can you get some more sticks?
Why?
Okay, we need some leaves. Daddy, we almost ran out of sticks.
Whoa! They are here. They are here again. I'm gonna run.
I told you don't go in the
No.
forest. Daddy, can you get some more sticks?
Nope.
We're running out
There's
of sticks.
there's cannibals already here.
Daddy, come here. We're running out of sticks. We're running out of sticks.
There are cannibals, so I don't want to go there.
Daddy, press E.
Hang
You
on.
can make it.
Yeah, but
Oh, what are you doing?
eh,
We
I think they're
need-
gone.
They're not. They're still here. They're still here. I'm right. They're still here.
Let me check. I'm just gonna check it.
Don't! There's still more.
Yeah, I think they're gone.
There's still more.
Oh, they're still there.
Yeah, I know. Don't go to the forest. Daddy, we're running out of sticks. We need some more.
Yeah, but how can we get more sticks if they're still there?
You can't pick that stick.
What are you building? Doesn't you don't need this.
Wait,
Hey, you don't need this. Come on, stop wasting.
I didn't put it.
Yeah, but you put it there.
Wait, where's it? You delete the fireplace
Yeah, we don't need that.
on
We-
there?
Yeah,
Why?
because we already have a fireplace here.
Oh.
Let's check if there is a turtle.
Turtle. I need to get the turtle.
Yeah.
Turtle, go back! Whoa, I can echo. Turtle, go back! Dude, I can echo. Oh,
Do you still have blood in your hands?
yeah.
You need to wash it.
Why?
So that you'll not get infected. Wash it in the water.
It's already washed.
Yeah, let's go to the other island. Here.
I don't want it. I want to stay on here.
Here. No, in the other small island. I'm here.
That scared me.
Over here, I'm here. Ooh.
Okay.
Come here, there's a 2 out of 8. Okay. There's a gun here.
I want that.
It's not a gun yet, technically. It's just there. It's an ingredient. Hey, pick the rope. Pick up the rope.
Oh. Wait. Oh, I got those.
It's just the material so that you can create a gun.
Where's the gun?
No, it's only a material.
Oh, I thought that was a gun.
Hmm. How do we go there? Small raft. Signals. Houseboat. Oh crap. We needed lots of logs, so yep. And sticks. Wait, can we use the boat? Come here. Let's go to the boat. Where are you?
Wait.
Let's go to the boat. Let's check the small island. But first we need to eat.
I already flew. I already flew. Daddy, I already flew.
Are you full?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna come here.
Okay. I'm waiting for turtles. But I need water. Oops. Oh, plus I
Yeah.
about to die. So.
Why is here? How can we use the raft? It's already landed.
Daddy,
Hmm.
you. Oh dear, not this. Oh no, it's stuck.
Yeah, it's stuck. I don't know why.
I went on a shed. I went on a boat shed, and I just let it stuck. I let it stuck. What are you doing?
I'm building a small raft so that we can go to the small island.
We can get a bigger raft.
Yeah, but it is stuck, so we can't use it.
No, the other raft, not the big raft. I think I lost it. I think I lost it. I can't find it. Oh, I found it.
So we're just gonna need some sticks then.
Let's use this raft.
Yeah.
Daddy, yes.
No, hey, Prince, stop building anything. Come on.
No, I thought that was small. I did it.
Come on, let's go.
I need to find a
Let's go.
small one.
Let's go.
Okay, okay, okay. Oh, well, I'm stuck. Oh, there we go. Okay, let's
Oop,
smash this. I let it.
Don't jump in the water.
Why?
There'll be sharks.
Sharks can get this.
Hey, you didn't wash your hands.
I did it. That's why you wash.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I can see the blood here. Oh, there's a shark. Can you see that?
Yeah, I know.
Don't go to the water.
We still have our stuff.
Yeah. Let's just gonna check that small island there if there's something.
Yeah, fishes. Daddy,
Hmm.
get in the water.
Sharks are gonna eat you.
Ooh, rainbow! I see rainbow.
Oh yeah, there's a rainbow.
Because rainbow can go in here. Bop, 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 tick, bop, tick, the bop, bop, the bop, the bop, the bop, tick, the bop, 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 bop.
Alright, let's go. Let's check here.
Bop, 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 bop.
What's in this side?
Oh,
What's this? Oh,
that just close enough. Kill the bird! 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 Kill the bird! Kill it! Kill it!
There's nothing in here.
I got the bird's head. Ew. Disgusting.
Oh, there's a shipwreck here.
Ew, I got a head. Ew! 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 I don't want this head. Daddy, where are you? Daddy, come here. Ew, I have a head.
There's a trophy.
Ew.
What is this area?
That was a head. Whoa. Where did you get that sword?
We got it from the cave.
Once you get this sword on the cave, give it to me.
Yeah, but you can only have it yourself
Yeah.
if you go to the cave as well.
Daddy, I found a ship. It's got
Yeah,
captain.
I told you it's a shipwreck.
Yeah, I know. Shipwreck.
Right, let's go. Come back here in the raft.
I think we need a bigger raft.
Nah, that's fine. This is fine.
We're going in a
Hey,
hole.
let me drive. Press E. Okay. Can you do it?
Yeah.
Alright. Well done.
Hit the bop, hit the bop, hit the bop, beat the bop. Hit the bop, hit the bop, beat it up, beat it up. Did it up, did it up, did it up, did it up, finish up. Hit the up, the butt, the butt, did up, did it. Did it, da 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 da. Do you like that song?
No, I don't know that song.
Da da da. It's a boat song. Da 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 bop. Hit it up.
Oh, I lost everything.
Huh?
I lost the clothes. Oh dear, when I died.
You must get them. I still have my things. Oh dear, I'm hungry. We can still get back.
Is that why?
That way is still crystal clear. I'm hungry. We're almost there. Ooh, it's getting light. Whoa! That wave is so strong. Huh? What was that? Daddy? Daddy? We're almost there. I can drive a boat. In the
Hey, where are you going? Go right. Hey, where are you going? Go back to our camp. It's going dark. Come on, let me drive.
Okay, don't go back.
Hang on.
Where are you going? If you go back to the map, I'm strong.
What? What are you doing?
Our whole map a bed.
Huh?
Just wait till the time.
It's going dark.
Right here. There. Right there.
Yeah, we're going there.
Oh, it's not a camp. It's
go.
Hey, we need to wait for the time.
Yeah, it's not yet.
What was that? What was that?
I got a cassette tape.
Wait, what? Where did you get it?
See? From the cave.
Huh?
From the cave.
Wait, what? Drop it and I will get it.
No, I can't drop it.
Press G. You can press G to drop. It's getting night. That's good. Dude, I need some more beer. Oh, I can't. I have more beer. Dude, I need to get some more rope. I need to pee. I'm sorry, Dad. I go to pee.
Alright.
I'm back. Wait, oh. It's nighttime. Daddy, sleep. It's nighttime.
Is it nighttime already?
Yeah, it is. See? Time is ready. Daddy,
Oh,
time
yeah.
is ready. I sleep. Good
Good
morning.
morning! You need to save. C.
Huh?
You need to save as well.
Oh yeah, I'm hungry. No, we need some water. Whew. Daddy, we're running out of food.
Yeah, because you eat all of that.
Yeah, I still have my food.
Yeah, we need to gather food now. Otherwise, they're gonna get angry because there's no food here.
Everyone will get angry.
Hmm.
Oh, Daddy,
Hmm.
this one needs all the lizards.
All right, let's go. We need to buy. We need to get some food. Here, follow me. We just
Wait, I just put that.
come here. Follow me. We need to get some food. Just avoid the. Just avoid the.
Ew, what is that? Ew.
Where are you?
Ew, eating the hand. Ew, ew. Ew, it tastes disgusting.
Come here.
I need it. That was disgusting. Daddy, don't put dead bodies on there.
Oh, I didn't.
Did I?
I think the other guys put it there.
Oof. Oh, yeah.
But we need to gather some foods, otherwise they're gonna get hungry.
Everyone is not here. Everyone is asleep.
Here, there's turtles here.
Daddy? Daddy, make sure you give it to me. Daddy,
Hmm.
make sure you give it to me. Daddy,
Hmm.
I was going to turn.
Come here. You're far away. Come here. How can you get the turtles if you're there?
I don't want it. I hate those monsters. Oh my god! seatbelt. No.
Oh crap. I can't carry anymore.
Why?
Because I'm bringing lots of it. Can you come here?
Okay.
Can you come here so that you can get the turtle? The turtle meat.
Run it. I don't want to use the small boat. I hate shorts on here.
Hurry up before the cannibals come here.
I'm coming. I'm coming. Daddy!
Just stay away from him. Just stay here near the water. Come here.
Daddy!
Come
I'm
here.
scared.
I'm over here.
You're splashing.
Come here. Let's go. Follow me.
Okay.
Follow me.
In the water.
Yeah, just stay in the water.
Yeah, they can't get.
Here, pick this one up.
Okay.
There's meat here. There. Pick that one up, and there's meat here. No, not the head. The meat. The meat. There. And then there's one more here. Only the meat, not the head.
Okay.
Here. Where are you going?
Wait.
There.
Okay, yes.
Alright, let's go back, and we need to put the meat in the drying.
Starfish.
Yeah, you can't pick it up.
This way instead.
Hurry up before the scary cannibals come here.
Okay.
And you need to put the meat here.
Okay, I'm scared. There we go, we made it. Okay, Daddy, remember.
Mm-hmm.
I found a big stick.
Alright, hey, put the meat here so that
Okay.
it will dry. Over there.
See.
All of it.
Oh, I'm hungry.
Are you hungry again?
I can't eat it.
Yeah, because it's not cooked yet. Right, let's go. Let's gather more food before the guys come back.
Oh,
Can I get this one?
Daddy,
Hmm.
where are you? You come back like that?
Yeah, I need to gather more food.
Turtle shell. I have a snack.
Yeah, but don't finish it.
I have one more snack.
3 more logs, okay.
Daddy, I found a paper. I got my bag. I have my book. Oh. I have a metal tray. Oh, sticks. Turtle shell. Where's the other one? Oh, nice paper. Axe.
How can we go up there?
Daddy,
Mm.
we need to put something. Do you hear that?
Nope.
Hello? Daddy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you hear that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's going to be storm? I think there's going to be storm.
There's snow.
Oh dear.
I'm going back. The house. Ooh. I think we need a shed. Not the boat shed. I think we need other ones. The one. Oh. Animals? I can't find any animals.
No.
Oh, one.
I don't have it. Do you still have the rope?
I still have it.
Come here. I need the rope here.
Why?
Because I need it. Oh, I killed the bird.
Daddy, I can't go far.
Come here.
I can't go far because I want to stay.
Come here. I need a rope.
Get another one.
I don't. Come here. I got lots of bird food here. You need to collect them before the snow come in.
Scared.
I'm just here, near the beach. What are you doing? Come here.
You're so far.
I'm not. Just come here.
Daddy,
Hurry up before the food will go away. Come here.
why? Daddy,
Ah, whatever.
I see you. I'm coming. Okay. Oh!
Alright, we need to go back there and...
Got a rope.
Oh,
Hello?
that's weird.
Did I drop it? Where's the rope? Daddy, I lose my rope. Oh, I can't even grab my rope.
Now come here. Bring it here.
Gee. Oh, I can't even grab.
Come here. Bring it here.
Oh,
Where are you?
wait. I can't see your name.
I'm up here. Alright, come here. Let's go.
No, wait for me! I think I need the boat.
No, Prince, come here. Hurry up.
Okay, okay, I'm coming. I didn't mean it to do that.
Before the snow comes here.
Huh?
We need to hurry up before the snow will come.
What?
Whatever. I don't know.
Daddy!
Where are you? Over here. Up here. And then you need to put the rope
I
up here.
found all these packages.
Prince, stay focused, please. Come here.
Okay. What are we doing?
Hurry up before the cannibals will get here. Hurry up before the cannibals get here.
I'm scared.
Prince!
Okay, I'm done for this.
I'm here. Let's go.
Okay.
Where are you?
I'm leaving out. I'm
Whatever.
done. I will play with you tomorrow. Okay. Daddy. Daddy.
Yeah.
Daddy. You need to do it with yourself. Because I'm ready out.
Whatever.
Because I called with Daddy because I have enough for that. 6. We're waiting and we know to follow. We go just the one in the circle. What's your track of blood? What the whistle will keep the track? We waiting that we not too far. So we move on. It's there's no show. We waiting we waiting every night to finally find it's nice to play with us. Guys, we were just the one in the same song. Are we stuck in JDG? We're waiting every night to finally remember why it is nice to wait. Hello? We're waiting every night to fall. We're waiting for 2% to see you. We're not sure. We're just shoot up. But goodbye. It's time to play with us and break. Little stars.
Water collector, rabbit cage, garden, shelter. Ooh, there's the bow. Okay. Armor rack, skin rack, small cabinet. Large cabinet.
We waiting for suppressive get to see you now. The night shooter,
Hmm.
the jockey shooter. This goodbye is us. You play with us and bring it. We waiting every night to walk nowhere room why it's we're going to still the same song. Stop at the bus How can I spell exit? How can I spell exit?
EXI.
Wait, check.
What? Yeah, I'm the only one here. I don't. Fine.
Daddy,
Mm.
Daddy, how can I spell exit?
EXIT. Nice to play with. Love, we want just to but in the same so always stop you cheating. We're waiting every night to find a winner will walk. But it's just like you when you voice. We're going to
The favorite bus. Did you forward? No. Hello? Maybe it's all the side. We're going to steal to sing so very positive. Goes for way when always show. Look that I made a picture. Daddy, look that I made. Look at this picture.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy, look at this. Daddy?
Mm.
Daddy, I made this picture.
Mm-hmm.
We waiting every night to find a week. For it's dashing to the snow and a one-horse open sleigh. sleigh. We're waiting every night to. We're waiting every night to run away. By it's a stars to play with Baba. La la, we're going to still watch the same song. So baby, faster, take your life away, right now. One nice and Freddy. Whoa. Five. Bananas and candy. This is where you be, or just don't Bananas and candy. This is where you be, or just don't Why do you want to say bananas and candy? This is where you be. I don't get it. You want to say what colors are ready? This is ready or just don't I want to say what Ready? I don't what's up. What happened? What happened? We waiting every night to find out where we but it's a source of where we are. La la, we going to see. Don't back back, but search your going over. No. Ha 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 ha. Bed. No, please, and I will eat you. No. Be waiting every night. Be waiting at what's a second to say you love me. Should it's Papa, it's on to play with water. We're waiting every night. La la, we go to school. We're gonna put it back. The fair of the don't talk a lot. Away go down and I go to the corner. We're going to go to the What do you want to say? What do you want to say? Not a burger. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you can say it glows. All of the other reindeers used to laugh to call him names. They never let poor Rudolph join games. Then all foggy Christmassy Santa came to say, Rudolph will know that way. Won't you try to sleigh tonight? I can play with it. Dashing through the snow, and a one horse and a full open sleigh. Are you making a video?
No.
You are. Look.
Yeah.
I know you taking a video. I wanna play. One open sleigh. What was it? That was this. Daddy. I saw you go escape. Dashing on the snow, and a Hey, jingle bell, jingle bell, all the way. Hey, jingle bells, bells jingle all the way. All is one, so what? What all open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. All is one. One horse open sleigh. One horse open sleigh. Dashing to this. Oh, come on. Dashing to the snow. And oh! Dashing to the snow. And I want open sleigh.
Mickey. Look at his eyes. He's so. You can't sleep me. See? Oh. You can't skip me. You can't skip me.
Mm.
Prince, ini is learning. Ako yung pati munod mo.
Ate na po ng video.
Dito.
Mm. Mm.
Trabaho ko kumain.
The heck? There's a big monster.
What? Daddy,
Yeah,
what?
there was so big a big monster.
Where?
It's so right over there.
Where was it?
I don't know. It was so scary.
He was huge.
Yeah, it was so huge.
You need. Oh no, you're hungry.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to sleep first.
You can't. Be waiting every night to go
Hey, be careful! You might drop
Go.
down.
to the big iron.
No, it's so scary.
Where was it?
It was there
Where? The big iron?
in the shore. Yeah.
The big iron?
I think I can go to sleep now.
No, you
Move your
can't.
hand. Move your hand. Can
You
move.
can't. Just. Oh, I see.
It was so scary. Let me check if we can see it from here.
You can't escape me. Wanna come up?
See? Where is it? I'll take this one. Oh. It's not. Where is it? Should be here after this one. Here, just wait. He's there. Oh, it's gone. Gonna have to take a look now.
Okay. You wanna see? You wanna see on the big iron?
I'm not sure if he's still there.
He's still in the woods.
But I'm hungry. I tried to kill him with the Molotov, but he broke the. See, he broke the ladder. See, he was there.
You can't escape me.
I think he got drowned. Oh no, it's not. That's not him.
You can't escape me. You
I think he got drowned. Yeah, I think he got drowned.
You need a ladder. Well, that was not a ladder. That was a stairs.
Yeah, he was there.
I think he got drowned.
I think we miss him. Well, that was not.
He was here. He was walking here, and I don't know where he is now.
You can't screw me. You can't screw me. Do you hear that?
Nope.
Daddy?
No. What are you doing?
I think it's coming from in here. I think it's coming from in here.
No, it should be a big. Oh, there are lots of them.
Those are big?
No, those are just small, but there are so many of them. Oh dear, I don't have ladder anymore. I mean, I don't have stairs
You can't screw me.
because you broke it.
You can't screw me. You can't screw me. You can't screw me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to create a ladder here.
Oh my god! It teleported right there.
Where? What? What?
There!
What is it?
There's a stairs!
No, I put it there.
Oh.
I built it.
You can't screw me. You can't screw me. I think he's getting close. You can't screw me. You can't screw me. You can't screw me.
Oh, come on.
You can't screw me. You can't screw me. You can't screw me. You can't
Oh, that's
screw
too big.
me. You can't screw me.
Sit. No. Oh.
Daddy, I'm starting the game.
Hmm.
I'm starting the game. You can't screw
Hey,
me.
come on, stop it.
You can't screw me.
Just that, stop it. Come on. I'm gonna have to build it again.
What?
I'm gonna have to build it again because he broke it. Still need 39. Oh dear. Let's just hope they're not gonna attack me. Oh, he's not one. There were plenty of them in there.
Huh?
I hope they're gone.
There's two.
Yeah, they're gone. Yeah.
Do you hear that?
Nope.
You can't screw.
Woo!
What was that?
Run!
Is that the big one? Is
No.
that the big one?
What the heck? I was so scared.
Kill him.
But there's 3 of them. Oh yeah, I think I can kill this.
I think they're scared. I think they're. I think then you make them mad. I think those are not monsters.
Yeah, they're cannibals.
They
They
turn.
they eat people.
There's one more.
Yeah, there's a guy here. Where is the? I think there was. Oh no. Where is it? I think they broke the here. Where's the other one? I lost the other one. Where was it? Yeah, the other one. The other one's gone. I think it was still alive.
Oh, you got some bones.
I can make an armor out of it. The heck?
Why can't you steal it? This seems so.
All right, coming. Hmm. Okay. Hang on. Yeah, I'm coming.
You're a little bit hungry. Daddy, you're a little bit hungry. Daddy, where are your foods? Daddy, you're going to die. You're going to die. You can't eat. You're hungry. Daddy, you need some food. Yeah. Daddy, you need... Daddy, I will spawn in the iron.
Yeah.
Did I save it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm back. Hello! I am going to hit you. Okay. I still have my things.
Of course, you save it.
No, I lost my rope. I lost my turtles. I already lose something. Daddy,
Mm.
I have something. I have something that I lost.
Yeah, maybe you didn't save it when you went out of the game. When you closed the game, you didn't save it. You need to save it before you close the game.
Oopsie! I don't do that. You touched the fire!
Hey, what are we doing?
Go back to the water. Oh, you're safe. You know what? Go back to the fire. It's night time. And 3, 2, 1. And it's taking too long. Oh, we're almost there. We can't sleep yet. Why is it taking so long? 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And oh, and 0. Oh, Z. Yes. Why is it 2?
Click C so that you can save it.
Oh,
Did you save it?
oh my God.
Hey, did you save it?
Yeah,
I think you didn't save it. You didn't click C.
I click C. Yeah. Daddy,
Hmm.
I don't want to get any dead bodies because I don't like it.
Okay.
Don't put it. We waiting. To say we love not you. Wait, did I find it? I did find it right. So where's the boat? Boats. Boats. I just need to check out the boats. Oh, there we go. Oh. It just Dude. Dude, I need a shed. Daddy, I need a shed. Oh no, that
I'm
won't.
gonna have to gather more logs.
Daddy, that won't fit. I don't need that.
Oh dear, there's a cannibal here.
What? What you? Daddy, I'm not going to that big iron. Okay. I will just Okay, that's nothing. Dude. Dude. We just... Daddy,
Hmm.
we need the stick. Oh. I need to save it. There we go. Dude. Daddy, don't go to the don't go too far on the forest, Dad. Daddy,
Hmm.
don't go to the forest so long, so far, okay? They might be huge. The big one will come. Don't go far on the forest, Daddy. The big one will come. Daddy,
That's fine. I can run.
he's so fast. He's so fast.
Yeah, he's fast, but I won't go near him.
I found a bird. Bird, bird, bird. Oh, I missed. Did I store a shark? Daddy, I just saw a shark. Daddy, I saw a shark. Oh. Be waiting for the second. I need my book. Wait. Food? Yes, we do need food. We don't need food. Oh. Daddy,
Hmm.
we need a tent on the. We need the tent. Daddy. we need
Nah,
the
don't
tent.
build anything there yet. We need to wait for them.
The others,
Mm-hmm.
the other people,
Yeah.
they ready sleep.
Yeah, they're gonna online again tomorrow.
Daddy, I clicked the wrong button. Let's try it. Daddy,
Daddy,
I'm
I'm
starting
fireplace.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I clicked the wrong button. I need a fireplace. I break it.
Why did you broke it?
I clicked the wrong
I clicked the
button.
wrong button.
Dude, Daddy, I'm sorry.
Daddy, I'm sorry.
Daddy,
I didn't mean it. I clicked the wrong button.
I was going to light it up. Daddy,
Yeah.
Daddy, I was going to light it up. Daddy, I was going to light it up.
Okay.
I didn't mean it. I clicked the wrong one. I clicked a axe. I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean it. Whoa, bird, bird. I almost break the stairs. Oh, I missed it. Oh, spider. Hello, spiders. Oh, here's want more food. Dude, Daddy, we can't cook. Daddy,
Yeah.
we can't cook. Oh, we still have sticks. Do you get all of these sticks? Do you get all of them? Hmm. Oh! Destroy that spider. I got a spider. Okay, Daddy,
Hmm.
we need 7 leaves. Daddy, we need
Hmm.
7 leaves. Daddy,
Yeah.
we need 7 leaves. Get some 7 leaves. Oh, I have a good shirt.
Speed weapon damage.
I found you. Die. We have more books. No. No. There's no spiders. Daddy. Daddy.
Hmm.
We need some leaves. Okay? No, there's nothing on that rock. What about this? Oh no, that's a pool. Spiders don't live on pools. No, that's just nothing. No. No. Oh my god, I picked one. No. 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 I can't. I need to find spiders. I already found 3 of them. Daddy? Daddy?
Hmm.
I found 3 spiders. I killed 3 spiders. Oh, my spiders. Itsy bitsy spider. Come out in the rock. I just thought that was a spider. Spider on it. Got it. Oh. I can't even smash it. Oh, I missed. Oh, I missed. Oh, that's weird. I think I can go on. Oh. Oh no, I'm stuck. Push. Oh no, Daddy!
Hmm.
The rock, Daddy,
Hmm.
Daddy, it didn't got stuck. The rock stuck the houseboat. This is so weird, Daddy. The
Hmm.
rock trapped the houseboat.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, I found a log. Daddy, I found a log.
Okay.
It was sneaking. Oh dear. Daddy, Daddy, we need to break the log.
Don't break it.
Wait, not the log, the rock. Daddy,
Huh.
we need to break the log. We need to break this rock. It trapped the house boat. It's not stuck on the sand. The rock stuck. Oh no! The rock stuck the big boat. Daddy,
Hmm.
the rock stuck the big boat.
Okay.
It's so huge. The rock is huge. Oh, they're not Daddy? I just need to give it to you. Bye. Daddy, I give it to you and you can give it to me and I give it to you and you give it to me and you give it to me and I give it to you and you give it to me. Oh, Daddy,
Hmm.
I can't see the big monster, but it's somewhere. I can't see it.
What?
I can.
Where?
It's somewhere. You can't see it. And now it disappeared.
Whatever.
Oopsie. I need to cook. Daddy,
Hmm.
you need to get some leaves. 7 leaves. Because I break it. You need 7 leaves. No. 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 Ooh. No. Oh, it don't live on there. No. 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 There's nothing. No. There's nothing. I found a stick. I can't grab it. There's just a fake one. Oh, gonna come out and see big spider come out in the water. Spiders don't live on small rocks. Where's all small rocks? Okay, that's good. Small. Oh, giant stick. Boom. It goes through the stick. What about this? It can. I can't chop these grasses. Daddy,
Hmm.
I need to get some blueberries. It's ready done. Oh. Yum. Okay. I think that was not right. I think we need to put it. I can't get a seed. Daddy, I get the seed out on the plant because it's taking so long for that plant. Cloth. Oh, I have cloth. Snack. I love snack. Oh, I see one. What is it? I always hit the door. I always smack my face on the door. Dude, Daddy,
Hmm.
it's getting dark. Daddy,
Hmm.
it's getting dark. Oh my God, it's almost dark. That's good. That means it's gonna die on the morning. Oh no! I didn't mean it. See, oh, I hate that. Daddy, I
Hmm.
see your name. Oh, I see a big one. Yes. Oh my God. What are those
I'm gathering logs.
I see the log. Oh. I see the log right there. Get it. Go in the ocean and get it. Daddy, I'm not tricking you.
What?
Go and get the log on the ocean.
No, I can't.
You can. I'm not tricking. I'm just tricking. I see. Behind you! There's a big one! Behind you!
Whatever.
I tricked you. Me waiting. Daddy, do you get some leaves?
Yeah, I have some leads here.
Do you get 7?
Yeah.
Okay. You need to put it in a fireplace. Oh. Oh my god, there's a zombie right there. Wait, that's you. I thought that was a zombie. Behind you!
Whatever.
No, I'm not joking. Behind you.
No,
Oh,
I'm,
you just
I'm getting hungry.
disappeared. That's weird. That's weird. I saw you disappeared. That's just weird. Daddy,
Mm.
if you go far, you disappeared. I saw you disappeared.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so weird. What's your girlfriend and go through the... Daddy, put some leaves. Yes. None. Oh, you did it. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I need some more meat. Just 2 more meat. Bird. I got a bird. Ew! No! Eat. I need that. I think I need it just in the head. Look. Hello? Oh, the rock are full. Beep. Tootsie boopy. I just need to eat one. Eat. This one. Yes. Oh! Where's it back? Bananas and Freddy. Yum. Yum. Nice. It's so glitchy once I shake. It's so glitchy. Why? Daddy,
Mm.
if you shake, you glitch. Oh dear. Not the wind again. Daddy, find a big one. Daddy,
Mm.
find a big monster. What's chasing
It's
you?
not coming here yet.
Huh? Was that the shadow?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Daddy, I see some eyes. Daddy, I see you. I see some eyes. I see something glowing. What are you doing? Daddy,
Mm.
You see? Hello?
Look at this one. Prince. Look.
Ugh, come on! Daddy!
I got a torch.
Daddy, you wake me up. It's time to bed.
We'll get to save it.
Ugh. I save it. Oh no, I'm hungry. I'm eating. Oh, come on, I'm hungry.
It's really burnt. Oh, there's no more food. Why you eat? You eat them all. We got no more food.
I need water. I'm full and I've got water. Give me the torch and I will kill you. I'm ready food. Daddy, get it now and I will kill you. If you don't get it, I will kill you. If you get the food, I will kill you. If you don't get the food, I will kill you. Okay? Daddy, if you don't get food, I will kill you. Okay? Get some
Whatever.
food. Right? And now I'm killing you.
Why won't you help me get some food here anyway?
No, but I can't stay on here because I'm afraid of monsters. Stupid monsters.
You will become monster if you don't eat food. Since we don't have food, you're gonna become a monster.
No. Daddy, if you don't eat food on real life, you won't become a monster. Zombies are not here.
Come here, there's turtles here. We can get some food from the turtles.
Okay. I can't see you.
It's the same place where the turtles were.
Okay. Daddy,
Hmm.
we need a house on here. Let's go. Oh, that's... Daddy,
Come here. There are lots of meat, turtle meat here. You need to pick it up.
I'm going...
Where are you now? Okay. Alright, pick those meat
Yeah. I also friend.
here. That one. And there's another one here. There.
Oh, that's a head.
Yeah, we're gonna find some more turtles here.
Where are you going?
To find some more turtles. Because we don't have other food.
Okay. Daddy, go near to me.
Oh, what's this? Oh, there's a tower.
I see that.
This is a tower.
I need to go up and watch you. You. I'm up here. I see you. Let's eat some raw meat. Oh, come on.
There's no more. Oh, there's a deer here.
I see you. Oh my god. There's a zombie right there. Oh my god. Wait, that's you. You know this zombie. I thought you were the zombie.
I need to kill the deer.
What deal?
Over here.
Oh my god! Jill! Get out of here! Die!
Oh. Why it doesn't die?
Oh, it disappeared. The deer just disappeared.
There.
Okay, I will get it.
Get the meat.
Okay, I'm running. Okay. Oh,
It's the head. Alright, let's go. We're gonna put the meat and then we're gonna
listen.
save the game and we're gonna go.
I saved my face. Nice, quick save. Do you remember the rope? Yeah, there was a rope. Get it. Daddy, right here.
Where?
I found a rope on the boat. You remember? I found it. Was all.
Oh yeah. Good job.
I found it on the boat once everyone's here.
Yeah, alright, let's go.
I need my axe. Yeah. Okay. That's the wrong way. Wait.
You can't climb up there yet because the stairs are not done.
Oh. Hello? Wait. What was that? Dude, we're good at this. Sometimes we're not good at this, and sometimes we're good at this.
Alright. There. Put the meat there. Just press C.
I know. I'm trying to press C. That's cool.
Okay. Alright, it's gonna save and we're gonna go out from the game.
No, we're not.
Wow, I can eat the berries. Ooh.
I already eat them. I eat them. Daddy, I eat them.
Mm-hmm.
I eat them. I just eat them.
Okay.
Check those spiders. Spiders. I'm not spiders.
I'm gonna have to gather more logs.
Yeah, get them. I'll stay on small.
Don't break anything and don't eat the food yet.
I'm never hungry, that's why.
Yeah, but if you're not really hungry, don't eat it yet. Oh dear, there's lots of cannibals here.
I told you don't go
Ooh,
far. I told you don't
what the
go
heck
far.
are they doing? Look at those. There's so many of them.
Oh dear, he saw you. Go.
No, 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 no.
You?
No, no, no. Stop it. No, no.
What are they doing? I think they're drawing the tree. Can you see me?
Oh dear, there's so many of them.
Use. You ever see? It's going Come on! You want a wrong one! I told you don't go far.
Right.
Go back, go back. Go back, go, 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 go! They're going to climb! They're going to climb! Hurry up! They're going to climb. Why won't you see my name?
Because you're hiding. Oh, there. The name's, your name's yeah, there.
Because of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to kill you! Ah! Sorry, dude. Sorry, Daddy. I almost killed you.
You can kill the bird.
Whoa,
We can.
Sorry!
I got it.
I got it. I got the bird.
because we can use the feathers.
Or am I breathing? I hear me breathing. No, I'm hungry.
There's one more bird. Come here, bird. Come here.
We're going to kiss you. We don't kill you. Sorry.
There.
Oh, wait, did I kill you?
You got it.
I'm hungry. Oh no.
You're not that hungry yet. Just wait for the. Wait to get till you get night.
I'm hungry. Ew. Oh no.
Oh, there's turtles coming here.
Huh? Whoa, that's disgusting.
There's more turtles behind you.
Get out of here.
Wait for them to get to the shore. Wait for them to get to the shore.
I got one.
Alright. Press E.
Die. Ew, that's disgusting. No,
And press E and take the meat. Press E and take the
I
meat.
don't have an axe. Oh, no, I got. Ew, that's disgusting.
Let's take the meat here
I don't want the
to
head.
have it dry.
It's too hot.
No,
Daddy,
it's.
Daddy,
Hmm.
you know what?
What?
This one is disgusting. Ew, what is this? What is this meat?
There's a turtle meat.
Ew, I don't like turtle eat. Put it on the ocean. Ew, that's disgusting.
Yeah,
That's
leave it there.
disgusting. Yes. Watch it. Daddy, Daddy, ew, Daddy, Daddy,
What?
it's so slimy. It's so slimy.
You can wash your. You can wash in the water.
It don't wash. It can't wash. Hi, Daddy. Daddy, if you don't... Oh, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I'm hungry.
Just eat the berries here.
Oh. It don't work. That means I need food. See,
That's a bird.
I put meat.
What?
I put meat.
Oh.
Wait, that's... Ew. Different meat.
Because I'm gonna use the feathers.
You can grab the feathers. There's one feather right here.
Where?
I got it.
Okay.
Where's my feather?
It's in your bag.
I like the feather. Spider. Come on. Oh, that's not a right. No.
Yeah.
by a rock. Daddy, look inside.
Mm.
Dude. Oopsie. I don't have a... I need to get a... Okay. I need to get a weapon to get this. I want a weapon. I want a stick and a rock. Stick together. Boats, no. I don't need boats. Come on. Why? Where's the weapon? Weapon? I need a weapon. I couldn't find it. I lost it. I saw the bird. I just need to leave the bird. Oh no, not the log. Not the log.
I'm just gonna create a rabbit trap.
Okay. Daddy,
Hmm.
where do you get the axe? And where do you get the rock and the stick?
Ooh, there are so many of them.
I told you don't go down. Get to them!
Go, no, come on, get away.
Right.
I won't be able to fight them because there's too many of them.
Use your sword. You can do it. You can definitely do it.
No, there's too many. Look at that. See?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's okay, Cake.
Ah, they're coming!
See. I told you, use your sword. Let me see.
See?
Go down. Use your weapon. Don't just stay up there. Just
You want some vodka? Oh dear. Are they gonna destroy our tower?
No. Monsters don't destroy everything.
Yeah, I think they're not gonna destroy a tower.
Dude, you got so many axes. How do you get them? How do you get all the axes? Where did it come from? Where do you get...
I got a bow.
Wait,
See? I got a bow.
why do you mix it together?
If you mix something together,
Oh no. Pick up one. Okay, it doesn't work. I need a string
yeah.
to mix it together. I can't mix it. I can't. No. Snack. Oh dear, I'm hungry. Oh dear, I'm hungry. Oh dear, not already. Oh
Looks weird. They're still up there.
It doesn't mix. No. Daddy? That will work. Oh! Daddy, I got it mixed! See? It's a new one!
Well done.
Okay.
Oh dear, they're in the shoreline now.
What is this? What is this? That's so weird. What's it make? What is here? Oh. Was no. Oh, better. No. No. Oh.
Alright, you can sleep now.
Wait, what? We can't. Oh! I'm too cold. Fire, fire, fire. That air.
Oh.
No! Fire! Eat! I'm again frozen. Daddy, I came frozen.
Alright, you can sleep now.
Fire! You want to?
And save it.
You still fire! No, we still need to play. Oh no, I'm hungry. Because we sleep late. Yeah. Water, water. I don't want to break it. Okay. What's this and this? Equal. Daddy,
Hmm.
wait, come back!
I need to gather more
I
logs.
thought you put leaves on it. Wait. Okay. Use. Oh! Daddy, I have a rock with cloth on it. Oh, there's nothing. Oh, there's nothing. I have it. I need some. No. No. Oh, those are sticks. Oh no. I have
Yeah.
Did I drop it? I still have it. Okay, what's... Oopsie. What was this? Was... No. Oh. Which one I can make? Hmm. Okay. Oh, it's not raining anymore. Daddy, come back!
Hang on.
Daddy,
It's done here.
Daddy, I have a load stick. I can't move. Oh, I don't have a head. I want a bird's head. Load stick was this. He goes load. Was what? What's this? Oh. Oh. What's this? Oh. Daddy,
Mm.
did you see me behind? Did you see me?
Yep.
I have a long stick. Did you see my long stick?
Why?
I make the long stick. I didn't.
Hang on, I'm gonna go there.
No. The bird. The bird. I got the bird.
Oh yeah, how did you do it?
I didn't know.
It's nice.
This is a long stick sword.
I got mine as well.
Yeah. But that's not a stick sword. yummy. Daddy, you
Mm.
want a piece of this? It's yummy.
What is that?
Get out of here. Yeah. Better. What's that?
Look.
How do you make that? How do you make that?
See?
Where do
You need to have some bones.
Okay, you need to get bones and drop it here, and I will.
I can't drop any bones. Hang on. Maybe we can put some bones here. Okay.
Oh, you can. Okay, we need a.
Oh, these are not bones.
Okay.
We can create a
Oh,
bone.
I found a bone chair. Daddy, I found a bone chair.
Hmm?
I found a bone chair.
No, 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 not the bone chair. The bone basket.
Oh, but no, no.
This one. And then you can take the bone and then.
We need bones. We need another one. We need another one. We need another one.
No, no, just one, just one.
No, because if we need lots
Oh,
of
dear.
bones. Get it!
It's empty.
I have more. I have one
Oh.
more stick.
You got one more stick? Put it here. Put it there. I've only got one more stick there.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna deposit the bones. And get the bones. Get the bones here.
Huh?
Get the bones here.
Well.
It's inside a basket. Just press E on the basket. Did you get all of that? All of it. And then go to your combine and get a stick and combine it with a bone
Stick and bones.
and red shirt. Cloth, that one. More cloth. More cloth. And more bones. Bones. More bones. There. And you got it. Well done.
What do you say, Mike? I got it.
Oh dear, the feathers are flying. Oh dear.
I got it. I got it. Feathers. Dude, I have more feathers.
Oh, there's one more bird coming.
Oh!
Oh, we broke it.
I didn't do that. You broke it.
Oh, what?
Okay.
Where are the logs? Oh dear, we just broke it.
Right here.
No, these are not the logs. We got lots of logs here. Let's not hit it again, okay? Cause
Don't do it. I will do it. I will do it. I will do it. Okay.
it's going to be the
I found
log
this.
holder. But we can't build it because we don't have stick anymore.
We need this to put logs.
Oh dear.
Daddy,
Yeah.
We need that to put logs.
Yeah, but we don't have stick anymore. We need to
We need
gather more.
cart.
We need to
can't
gather
find
more
a cart.
sticks.
We need a cart. Is this a cart?
No, the cart is here in the house.
Where?
It's in the house.
Oh.
But yeah, we need to gather more sticks there. You coming?
I don't want to go.
You'll be able to build it without the sticks.
I need one more. Hi. What happened? Hi.
Oh, we need to save it because we're gonna sleep now. It's already 12. Otherwise, mommy will get hungry. Go to the house and save, and then let's close the game.
I already saved it.
Okay, and close the game.
You will play it tomorrow.
Yeah, I can play it again tomorrow, of course.
I'm going back to bed.
Don't wake mommy up. Don't wake mommy up.